District 10 in Sioux Falls. I serve as the Assistant Minority Leader.
And I'm Reynold Nesiba. I serve as a state senator from District 15 in northern Sioux Falls and serve as the Minority Leader of the Senate.
And we don't really have too much to say today. It's just been week 2 in the legislature, but we do think it's important to still show up and answer any questions that you guys might have. Things that have happened in the House this week, we're still seeing a lot of bills being introduced. The Democratic caucus, both in the Senate and the House, will review bills as they come, and we will always fight for fairness for all South Dakotans, equality, and justice. We in the House have seen a lot of compact bills coming through for social workers, for advanced nurse practitioners, and just this morning in Health and Human Services for psychology services. So it's kind of been compact week here in the State House. Those compacts will really help South Dakotans have access to health care, also affordability. So hopefully we will see those go through the Senate as they come over to your side. Other than that, we did see the Joint Resolution 5001 come through State Affairs yesterday. I was pretty quiet on that issue. I know Representative Les Meister spoke out about that, but a little bit of my feelings about that. I was leaning yes. I was leaning yes until we got to committee and were hearing the testimony, and it became really apparent that the bill sponsor had not reached out to the Democratic Party. We had not been consulted, and we believe we are strong stakeholders in the matter. And when you have a joint resolution that is amending our Constitution, I think it's really important that we are responsible about what we are willing to put on the ballot, and it became very apparent that this is a party issue. So it was just something that it felt irresponsible to put onto our ballot to change our Constitution.
And again, Republicans and Democrats, we do work together on a variety of issues. We've seen that in commerce and state affairs on the Senate side this week. Republicans and Democrats alike support E15 and being able to use some money from the Governor's Office of Economic Development to encourage gas stations to be moved from E10 to E15 to support our ethanol producers and our corn growers in South Dakota. We agree that if there's needless boards that exist in statute, that we should get rid of those. And then yesterday we had a long debate on SB 20 that came from the Secretary of State's office about protecting election workers. And Democrats and Republicans alike, we think that election workers deserve that protection. Now, there were some far-right Republicans there arguing that it was taking away free speech rights, and that's simply not true. The thing that we need to understand is that an election booth is not a place for a debate, right? It is a place for somebody to be able to go and it's really a civically sacred space, is what it is. A place for us to vote, to make our decision heard. It's really at the bedrock of how representative democracy works in America. And so those election workers need protection. I brought an amendment to go even a step further to make it a bigger penalty if there was a second offense for trying to overthrow an election by harassing or insulting an election worker. And that amendment failed, but Democrats, we too take election integrity seriously, and we want to protect the election workers and the integrity of our elections going forward. One thing that we do disagree strongly with the Republicans about is that we support the will of the people. And SJR 501, this is the amendment to change our Constitution and to really to expand government, to create bureaucracy and paperwork, to make it harder for people to get health care. The people of South Dakota, 50,000 of them signed petitions to put it on the ballot, and we voted on it 15 months ago to expand Medicaid. South Dakota's had a decade to do this. The supermajority Republicans have had multiple opportunities, 7 tries, I think, over the last decade to do this, and they could have put it together in a way that they wanted, but they chose not to. So the people of South Dakota organized, they put this on the ballot, and I just want to make sure that the people of South Dakota know what the text of that says. right? On section 2, it says the state of South Dakota may not impose greater or additional burdens or restrictions on eligibility or enrollment standards, methodologies, or practices on any person eligible under this section than on any person otherwise eligible for Medicaid under South Dakota law. That's what the people decided on, and that's what Republicans, the Republican leadership right now, is trying to chip away at. They're disrespecting the will of the people, they're expanding government and using government to take healthcare away from people. And I urge other legislators to vote against SJR 501, and if this does end up on the ballot in November, that we need to push back against this to make sure that that working people in South Dakota continue to have good access to healthcare. And we stand ready to answer any other questions. And I see one from Austin Goss.
That's right, Austin Goss, Coach Scout at SDBA. You talked a little bit about those compact bills and how you have a lot of them this year. Can you kind of elaborate, especially someone who works in healthcare, kind of what exactly those do or don't do for people who have no concept of what that is?
Yeah, sure, thank you for the question. So compacts make it a lot easier for those who are practicing. So let's just use advanced practice practitioners as an example. We have advanced practitioners here in our state who are able to help people, who are able to see patients and work collaboratively with our providers here in the state of South Dakota. So what this bill would do is allow our state, alongside the other states in this compact, to move from state to state, to be able to work in those states without having to apply for a new license. There's always a barrier, especially when I'm from Sioux Falls. I live close to Minnesota and I live close to Iowa, and we have a lot of practitioners who work at Sanford and Rivera who also work in that area and who want to be able to go out of the state but have to purchase or have to apply for a license in a different state. So what this bill does is allow us to move out of the state and work in other areas, but it also allows other folks in those states to come to South Dakota. So we have more providers. So we have the ability to take care of our work shortage needs. We all know that there is a huge work shortage in healthcare with advanced practitioners, with nurses. So this is just making it easier for us to have access with those surrounding states around us.
Lee Strubinger.
Lee Strubinger, SDPB. It seems like a lot of the breakdown on House votes is typically there might be about a 20-member block, I guess, on the opposite side of the aisle that has voted against some of these compacts even. Can you talk about maybe how House Democrats are feeling about their role this session in that chamber?
Yeah, I think the 7 of us, although small, we're mighty. We can block votes if we choose to, or if it's necessary. What's really interesting is with those compacts, and I'll address that too, with those compacts, the statute has to be exactly the same in every single state statute from every single state that is participating in that compact, which is why you're seeing resistance from some of those Republicans. They think that it should be worded differently or that it might supersede our state statute. I don't believe it does. These compacts and this legislation has been supported by a large number of health care organizations across our state. But coming back to your question about being able to block votes, we want to work with Republicans on any bills that we have issues with. We believe in compromise, but when push comes to shove, if we're not seeing, if we're not getting something out of a bill, or if we vehemently oppose it, we will try and block that. Yeah.
I hope you asked that question to the Republican leadership that are coming in a little while. So it's hard for us to speak for and to speculate exactly what's going on with the other side.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Our last one, or
It's not entirely.
you can do it.
Okay.
That's totally fine.
So getting back to the resolution on the primaries and picking constitutional officers at the primary level, like what also went into that consideration, given the fact that maybe the current process as it sits might result in constitutional officers that Democrats might agree with less overall. I'm projecting there, that might not be the case, but in terms of people who kind of ultimately end up in these positions, given that all Republicans kind of hold this those positions.
Good. I'll take that on because we Democrats were essential to getting that bill out of the Senate floor last year. I think it passed 18-17.
One vote, yeah.
It was a one-vote margin. I had offered an amendment that got on there that appeased. And so what we did on the Senate side is Republicans and Democrats were working together to change statute. But I don't think the Republicans in the Senate want to put this in the Constitution. And so we're open to having a conversation in statute about what should happen in a primary. But the communication that happened on the House side and the fact that they were trying to change the Constitution was just, it's beyond the pale. That wouldn't have survived Republican senators. And so we need to have a broader conversation among the leadership about how to go forward with that. And again, this is mostly a problem of the Republican Party, but being able to have primaries for those constitutional officers, I'm not opposed to that idea. I think that the idea of doing this through constitutional conventions is something that most states have moved beyond, and it's time to move them to primaries. But it should be in statute in case we need to tweak it. It's far easier to change because changing the Constitution is a difficult thing.
Here, I'll do the last one. Speaking of this, I mean, yesterday I thought what was interesting during the debate was the fact that the Democratic Party chair had no idea about this bill. Really, it sounded like the executive director really didn't have any idea about this. I mean, since yesterday, and I know it's only been 24 hours, has there maybe been any sort of conversation about how, if that bill or that concept was passed, how it might negatively impact the ability of Democrats to recruit candidates, especially for down ballot races like auditor and school and public lands, et cetera? Is that something you guys have maybe thought about or talked about at all?
We had part of that conversation a year ago when we were having this conversation, and that's why I offered an amendment to make it clear that if there were only one candidate, and there wasn't a primary, that we would be able to do it through a convention, or if we didn't have a candidate by the date of the primary date, that the party would still be empowered to name someone to have them on the ballot later. So there would need to be some accommodation and conversation with Democrats to get our support on that, and we're open to that conversation, but trying to do things in a unilateral way without conversations among our leadership and with our state party elected officials. What I mean by our state chair and our executive director, this isn't going to go anywhere. So we need to have a broader conversation, and Democrats need to be at the table.
Real quick in closing, is there anything you guys are looking out for, thinking about heading into next week?
I'm concerned about SDR 501. I'm not sure when that is going to come up, but I think it's a terrible idea. I think one of the most short-sighted decisions South Dakota has ever made is the almost decade that we went without doing Medicaid expansion. Governor Dugard was a leader on this. He was really in a position. He just looked at the math of this. That this was it's a 9-to-1 match to be able to take care of healthcare for low-income people. And these are people that are working, right? These are people that they're making more than Medicaid eligible, but not enough. They're in this gap between 100% and 138% of the poverty line. And I wish that we would have done this a long time ago, but to now, after the people have finally taken it upon themselves to get this on the ballot and get this done, for Republicans to want to roll back these protections and to expand government and create paperwork, I think is a bad idea, and it's going to be bad for South Dakota businesses, right? Businesses are now going to be asked to fill out paperwork to document that their workers are working for them to be able to maintain their health care. And what we want is people in South Dakota to be able to have access to the health care to which they're eligible.
For me and the people that I represent, I think that any anti-LGBTQ legislation, we see it every year. It's about week 3 and week 4 when this legislation is usually dropped. So that's kind of my concern. We haven't seen it yet, but again, we see it every year, so we know it's probably coming. And hate has no place here in South Dakota, so hopefully we won't. Time will tell.
Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Thank you guys for being flexible.